Hey again everybody, this is Tim. This is the first in the series I'm calling Digital Kayak Coach. I'm separating out this from my regular video series about kayak adventures and going to Greenland and all that. And this is going to focus purely on instruction. And unlike the last instructional video I did, it's a little colder. I mean, it's November right now when I'm filming this, so I need some different equipment. Step one. Okay, now I'm ready to go. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the Greenland-style forward finish roll, or the reverse sweep, as it's also called. In Greenlandic, this roll is called Kingumut and Tishrugo. This roll begins with the paddler leaning back with their paddle tucked behind their stern. They capsize over backwards, sweep the paddle and their body forwards, and recover leaning low on the front deck. We're going to learn this through a progression. We're going to start on land, working on the basic body motion. Then we're going to move into our kayaks, and we're going to move into the water using a spotter to help hold us up. And we're going to move to doing it on our own. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about some debugging, some common issues that people see when they're learning this. Starting on land. For the forward finish roll, I'm going to start as though I'm sitting in my kayak, twist so I'm facing to whatever side I want to work on, and then lean over, almost as though I'm doing a push-up off to the side. I'm going to try to get my shoulders as flat to the ground as possible. The idea is that if your shoulders are flat to the surface of the water, you float. You can use your own buoyancy as an aid to help you roll. With my hands at about shoulder width, I'm going to arch my back as much as I can, and I'm going to look up toward the horizon, lifting my butt into the air at the same time. Big arch to the back. Now, if you imagine that I was in my kayak and I was upside down, my head would pretty much be at the surface of the water. This is our setup position. Now, here comes the propulsion. I'm going to switch from an arch in my back to a curl in my back. I'm going to drop my head down and drive my leg. It'll look something like this. So what I think of is that I'm drawing a question mark with my nose. So I start with my head up, stretched way out away from the kayak, almost perpendicular, drop my head, bring my head straight toward my kayak, and then swing forward and low, keeping my shoulders square and facing down the whole time. You're not using very much force or energy to actually move yourself into this position. If you want to use a lot of leg, you want to use a lot of back, you want to use your flexibility as much as possible. Now, ways to make this easier are, for one, keep as low as possible. If you try to just sit up, you're having to use a lot more muscles in your arms to do so. The lower you can stay while doing this, the easier it will be. So when you're in the water, the idea is very similar to a layback roll. Your head should be the last thing to come out of the water. So for the propulsion, again, your back goes from an arch to a curl, drop your head, imagine the boat, drive my lower knee and hip towards me, and at the same time, I'm pushing my upper knee and hip away. I'm trying to right my kayak. And the recovery. My body, I crunch forward, keeping low, swinging my head low and across my foredeck. Now this is a cool little thing to experiment with. If you drop your head and you're trying to look down into your kayak while you're doing this, while you're swinging onto the foredeck, what that does is it actually tightens up your neck muscles and your upper back muscles. And go figure, those are all connected all the way down through your butt and through your hips. So if you're looking straight down as you recover, it actually makes it harder to lean forward. So as you recover and you swing your head onto the foredeck, try looking at your feet. Try looking at the bow of the kayak. See what makes it easier for you. So I find for me that if I'm looking at my feet or just a little bit forward of them, that gives me the best body mechanics to stay low on my foredeck. Makes my rolls much easier, much smoother. But now moving on. We're now going to go from working on land to working in the water with a spotter or a paddle float or an avatok. Something that gives you support in the water. So at this point, we're not using our paddles yet. We want to work on that body motion that we developed on land, or we're going to do it in our kayak and in the water. So the drill is very similar to what we did on land. Using a paddle float or the bow of a friend's kayak, or what works really well is someone's hands. Someone can give you support if you have friends. It's really easy to use all upper body with the paddle float and not any lower body. This makes it really tough. Focus as much as you can on driving your legs, flipping that kayak over as much as possible, and then swinging forward. The more you can use your lower body and the less you can use your arms, the easier this roll is going to be. Trust me. And now, going away from your support, going away from the paddle float or the bow of someone's kayak. We're going to the paddle. Oh, okay. This roll is an extended paddle roll. So the same width that you normally would, but out to the one end. This is where some people have some trouble. We're adding in another thing to think about while we're doing this roll. But the paddle now is going to give us a lot of support. Think back to when we're in the water, floating, arching our back. We're going to have the hand on the side that we're doing the roll on. We're going to have that up at our forehead. The other hand going to be reaching across and out into the water. So you'll be sitting kind of like this. So my shoulders are flat to the water, body arched, paddle at this point should kind of be sticking out of the water some. And then when I do my leg drive and drive my head, I switch hands at my forehead. Watch this carefully. I'm stretched out. I'm going to push away with one hand. I'm going to pull the other hand towards my forehead as I'm swinging forward. I'm going to have my hand up at my forehead. And as I swing forward, keep my head low, I switch hands. So now my hand that was at my forehead is further away from me. My hand that was further away from me is now at my forehead. Swinging forward. And that's essentially the roll. Add in that paddle, using the same body motions, applying pressure with the pry, sweeping forward, you'll get it. Now if you don't get this roll right away, don't worry about it. So far we've only been working on going into the water and out of the water on the same side. So let's do the full roll. We twist, put our paddle behind the stern of the kayak, and then arch to the back and capsize backwards into the water. Some people have troubles with this right here, especially if you're in a low volume skin on frame kayak or just a rolling kayak and you have a Trillik on, or you have a PFD and a dry suit. If you have a lot of flotation high up on your body, you might just capsize back into the water and not sink. It's happened to me plenty of times. Best way to get around this without losing all of your buoyancy is, instead of just sitting perfectly upright when you go to capsize, lean as far back as you can. Put your elbow on the back deck or go even further back. This way when you capsize, you don't have as much buoyancy. You have to get deep under the kayak. You can just kind of sneak under it and go into your setup. We just talked about a lot of different things, and it's really easy to mess up one thing and have the rest of the roll not work. So let's talk about a couple of those things and what they look like, so hopefully you can spot them when you're practicing. So the most common issue I see that people have is they're not riding the kayak early enough, or at all. It might sound funny, but it happens all the time. You might have perfect body position off to the side, good drive with the paddle, but if you don't drive your legs, if you don't drive that kayak up, you're not going anywhere. So it looks something like this. Good setup, good position, and drive, nothing happens. You lift up a little bit, but if you don't get that kayak underneath you, you're not going to come out of the water. Doesn't matter how much pressure you put on the paddle. Second thing is people are turning sideways, and that looks like this. So you see how that one shoulder is sticking out of the water? That's what we don't want. We want to have our shoulders flat to the water. This helps a couple things. For one, it helps our body mechanics, makes it easier for our body to move through this motion. Also makes us float higher. It's really tough to push and pry across your body. It's much easier to do it in front of your body. It's harder for me to flex side to side and bring that kayak up as much as I need. And also it makes it harder to get forward while maintaining constant pressure on the paddle. Another thing that people do very commonly is they get too far back. And this is often a flexibility issue. And if you go a little bit back, that's okay. So you can see here, if I'm pointed too far back and I drive with my legs, I have to hold myself up then the whole way as I sweep forward. So that means a lot of pressure on the paddle, a lot of pressure on your body to hold yourself up. If I start my propulsion, driving my kayak up and prying with my paddle when I'm further forward, I don't have as far that I have to hold myself up in the water to get onto the front deck. And I can't state this enough, but we want to practice this so it feels easy. We don't want to make this a grunting, struggling roll. This should be really smooth and simple and graceful. Remember, no splashing allowed. You've been practicing a little bit now, and you've got your roll. There's two slight variations, might say flavors of this roll. There's the one that I just taught, that I think is the easier one to teach, that is mainly a pry. But it can also be done as a sweep, where you get a much longer lift with the paddle. Then you sweep forward, just put a little bit of a climbing angle on that paddle, the paddle produces lift, and I can sweep forward in one big motion. So if you've been practicing this roll for a while and you want to up your game a little bit, work on something different, a little more challenging, a couple things you can try. First one is rolling with the paddle behind your head. Just like this. Same width of the grip, just behind your head. Same body motion, same everything. But what this does is it forces you to use better body technique. You can't rely on a big pry with your hands. You have to use much more of your core and your legs to come up. All these different parts of this roll can be fine-tuned. And by practicing doing rolls, say with the paddle behind your head, it forces you to make all the little parts of it that much better. Thanks for watching, everybody. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe down below. If you have any questions or need help on this technique, drop me a comment, I'll get back with you, and we'll work through this together. If you have a request for a technique that you'd like to see on a future video, drop me a line in the comments, and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for watching. Safe paddling. Have fun. Good luck. My feet, maybe a foot in front of my feet. Standard in this first, in this, okay, try this again. Come here. Come here.